Some of you weren't born yet, but in 1969, my dad took me to the Mobilization for Peace March in San Francisco. Some of you may have remembered the Mobilization for Peace. Back then, there was no internet, so this was a massive organizational feat. A lot of mass mailings, a lot of phone calls. To have multiple peace marches across the country on the same day, San Francisco and Washington, D.C. being the largest ones. The street was filled, in San Francisco, was filled with color. All kinds of people from all walks of life, dressed as we dressed in the 60s, which was very colorful.
Yes.
Along with Vietnam vets in fatigues and clergy with collars. We all had homemade signs. None of these pre-printed things you see at conventions. We made our own signs. Yes! To the people. And we were led by people shouting into bullhorns or just shouting, 1, 2, 3, 4. We don't want your anymore. It was the F word. So, being in 9th grade and being able to shout the F word was really fun. We walked 4 miles through the city, through Haight-Ashbury, which was my favorite part. People hanging out the windows. It was awesome. To Golden Gate Park, where we rallied and sang and heard speeches, and Crosby, Stills, and Nash, before Young joined them, were there singing. Oh, I know. I came home and bought their album. I think they only had one album at the time.
I still have it.
I still have it. And after the rally, we hitchhiked back to our truck 4 miles away. Hitchhiking, totally illegal, right? I've been told years and years of my life, never hitchhike, and here I was with my dad hitchhiking. And we drove back down the coast, feeling like we had brought peace one step closer. Along with my parents, I continued to rally and work for peace through the Peace Operations Center at All Saints Church in Pasadena. In 1971-ish, I traveled with Reverend George Regas as part of a delegation to Washington, D.C. for an interfaith service followed by a candlelit procession and vigil in front of the White House. I was asked to read a prayer for peace and sat in front of thousands in an enormous sanctuary with Joan Baez a few chairs away, ready to offer her talents for the cause. I was in the same room with her alone for like 5 minutes. And I didn't say a word. Because I knew that she just needed a rest from people. So I did, and it's fine. I didn't speak to her. Could have kicked myself afterwards, right? I entered college 4 years later, certain that my calling was to work against the war in Vietnam for the rest of my life. But in 1975, the war ended, and so did my career. Or so I thought. Until the narrow focus of my teen passion widened into an understanding that without justice there is no peace. And there were 1,000 issues to address, all connected, all stones being laid under our feet as we built roads to real peace. Martin Luther King Jr. had made those connections and had intertwined his civil rights work with the peace movement. They believed that if he had lived, he would have been right in the forefront of the peace movement. After all, who was being drafted into military service by the vast majority? People without resources, overwhelmingly people of color. Young men who couldn't opt out with college deferments or be bought out by wealthy parents. And being a proponent of nonviolent action, King would speak to the peace movement about the need for peaceful protest, bringing the process in line with the stated end. One day we must come to see that peace is not merely a distant goal that we seek, but that it is a means by which we arrive at that goal. We must pursue peaceful ends through peaceful means. This kind of peace is the opposite of Pax Romana. Anybody learn about that in school? Pax Romana, oh yeah. You would if you were studying ancient texts, right? The peace that pervaded the Roman Empire for nearly 1,000 years. Pax Romana was enforced by the military, all protests being subdued through occupation and public execution, much like our Jesus. The Romans built an astonishing infrastructure, as Monty Python will tell you, throughout the entire empire. They built the aqueducts, and they built a lot of roads. And as Monty Python would say, and public education, and drinking water, and all these things that the Romans have done for us, right? the purposes of military efficiency. It was not for the common good. The infrastructure of war had to be transformed, much like swords into plowshares, and new roads constructed for the purposes of peace. In contemplating our text for this morning, my mind was everywhere. So, if this is a little bit all over the map, it's because I build roads in every direction. The text reads, "In the wilderness, prepare the way of the Lord, making straight in the desert," not like my brain, "a highway for our God." I recall the phrase, "the roadmap to peace." Do you remember that phrase? Yeah. Used for the process of finding peace between the Israelis and Palestinians. Then I remembered that it was coined and used by George W. Bush, with an assumed sense of accomplishment that felt like hubris to me. It's like, I've got the roadmap, here it is. So of course I consulted Wikipedia for the real facts, otherwise known as the facts of the people or crowdsourced facts, and found an articulate description that I will share here. Sometimes they really come up with some good stuff, those wiki people. Sometime in the mid-70s, and then I insert, while I was in college, the term peace process began to be widely used to describe the American-led efforts to bring about a negotiated peace between Israel and its neighbors. The phrase, peace process. The phrase stuck, and ever since it has been synonymous with the gradual, step-by-step approach to resolving one of the world's most difficult conflicts. In the years since 1967, the emphasis in Washington has shifted from the spelling out of the ingredients of peace to the process of getting there. Much of U.S. constitutional theory focuses on how issues should be resolved, the process, rather than on substance, what should be done. The United States has provided both a sense of direction and a mechanism. That, at its best, is what the peace process has been about. At worst, it has been little more than a slogan used to mask the marking of time. We're in a process, time after time after time. Some of you went through a process to get to the point of selling the building over here. There were complaints about the process. So the process matters. I'm not saying that, but they're saying, at worst, you can call it the process and then never get anywhere. The People's Encyclopedia also provided a list of peace proposals that have been offered during the peace process in this same conflict. Madrid Conference of 1991, the Oslo Accords of 1993, the Wye River Memorandum 1998, Camp David Summit 2000, the Clinton Parameters 2000, Taba Summit 2001, Elon Peace Plan 2002, the People's Voice 2002, I could have gotten behind that one, Roadmap for Peace 2003, Israel Time, aka One State Solution. Israel and Palestine, Israel Time. 2003, the Geneva Accord, 2003, Sharm el-Sheikh Summit of 2005, Franco-Italian Spanish Middle East Peace Plan, 2006, the Two-State Solution, the Three-State Solution, a Peace of Jerusalem, Israeli Peace Initiative, 2011. In addition, there have been the 2013 to 14 Israeli-Palestinian direct peace talks. And on the 25th of August 2014, Mahmoud Abbas, chairman of the Palestine Liberation Organization and president of the Palestinian Authority, announced that he would be presenting to John Kerry a new proposal for the peace process. So that's where we are. A lot of roads have been built, kind of like from my brain to you. And a lot of bombs have created those roads. But they and we keep building them, don't we? Keep trying. Because the alternative is eternal cycles of warfare and death. And the God we share has suggested that we choose life instead. There's an overwhelming sense of defeat sometimes when we look at situations like the Israeli-Palestinian conflict and its endlessness. We now have bumper stickers that say endless war, and the less is crossed out and it says this and this war. What I'm coming to realize in my old age, and after years of 12-step therapy, is that they have the same God I do. And it's not my job or the job of any single person or country to solve that conflict or impose a Pax Romana as much as I'd like to on certain days. And I do with Peter. I do it with Peter instead of Israel. But it is my job to participate in road construction, to do all the small acts of reconciliation and social healing that are within my power to do. And those small stones are and will be part of God's road to peace on this planet. That's where incremental progress can be measured on the ground. With one more turn in the road, I return to our text. Written during the Babylonian exile, Isaiah comforts the exiles with the promise that they can go home. Behind the image of the way of the Lord, God's highway, stretching from Babylon back to Judah, are actual roads that the exiles saw being built. Roads especially prepared by the Babylonians for the festive processionals of their gods. I know about this firsthand. In Pasadena, even before Thanksgiving, our roads are prepared for the Rose Parade. Banners are hung, viewing stands erected, markings are painted on the pavement. We get ready for the festive processional of our gods. Floral floats subsidized by companies and products we worship. The preparation time is enormous. The parade is a few hours, and then there is the debris removal. Aside from the jobs it creates, which are temporary, the Rose Parade is a colossal waste of time and resources. And I have to give you this aside because of the sermon last week. Okay, just a little aside. When our family moved out from Orange County, from behind the orange curtain, after our experience in Fullerton, we landed in Pasadena. And it was noted by my astute parents that the Rose Queen and Court had always been white and mostly blonde. And the flip, I don't know if you remember the flip. So my father, of course, held a communion service and demonstration on the lawn of the Rose Parade headquarters on Orange Grove, and I think John Colburn was there. The Young Turks were involved somehow with this demonstration, calling for more diversity on the court. And you can imagine what joy we felt as a family as those threatening, ugly phone calls that drove us from Fullerton started up again. But they didn't last, and you may have noticed a little more diversity on the court since the 1970s. So anyway, back to this. As the beat goes on, the stands go up, the roads are marked, the way of our lords is prepared. Can you imagine the same amount of effort given to welcoming God into our hearts and lives? Can you imagine the same amount of effort laying the groundwork for transforming our economic system so that everyone has enough to flourish? Or setting up social strategies and structures for conflict mediation or violence reduction? Or taking foreclosed properties and transforming them into actual housing for those without homes? Shift the resources. What could we do? In closing, I'll report that on Friday, John and I did have our date night and saw the movie St. Vincent, which I recommend. Just as the movie started, a homeless man entered our row with all of his stuff, tripped really hard over my knees, his towel swiping my face, and he spent half an hour unpacking his stuff into 2 chairs. All of my middle-class recoiling went on in my mind, and I found myself repulsed and resenting the noise and the presence and the unwelcome reminder of my own privilege. Nearly choked on my popcorn. I considered asking management to ask him to leave, but I didn't. I've been married to a homeless man. Whole nother story, by the way. I have several friends who've been homeless, some of whom survived, and some of whom didn't. And on top of that, the movie I was watching was about making sacrifices to improve the lives of others. So guess how hypocritical I was feeling? Nothing like a good date night. So with a bit of mental effort, my roommate became my companion as we watched this movie together. And he spent the last half hour of it packing up his belongings. And the lights came on and I saw his face. Road-weary, weather-beaten, vague, and a little half-crazy. I know that mental illness can lead to homelessness. Homelessness can lead to mental illness. It's a road on a Moibus strip. And it means he'll be sleeping under the Rose Parade viewing stands this month. Because the money invested in those stands won't be invested in his health and well-being. I didn't invite him to stay at our house. So he'll still be sleeping under the stands. I left him there, blinking in the light. But I know that his destiny is linked to mine, and that everything I can do to redirect funds from frivolous parades in honor of capitalism toward housing the mentally ill is one more cobblestone in the road to peace. And we have our work cut out for us. We do what we can do, and even if it isn't enough, it is good.